got a great panel joining me here today, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves one at a time, starting on my left.
Hi, I'm Alex Hyslop, and I'm head of product for Mira showers.
Thank you.
I'm Tim Pollard. I'm a principal of Pollard & Pollard, and I've been involved in the industry for about 30 years now.
I'm Yvonne Orgill. I'm the Managing Director of the Unified Water Label.
I'm Tom Reynolds, Chief Executive for the Bathroom Manufacturers Association.
Right, well, welcome one and all. Tim, actually, before we start getting on the subject of water, can I say, I saw your post about the Sustainable Buildings Centre in Leamington Spa and the fact it's kind of being demolished. Is there something you want to say about that? Because it's tragic, really, considering everything we're talking about here, and that's now being demolished.
Apart from being personally a bit of a blow, Dave, I have to say it caught my heart a bit. It's never been more valid than now. Never, ever. It was still a completely innovative building, a stunning building, I might say, one of the best buildings in Leamington. And its destruction is very, very sad.
What sort of signal does that send? I mean, we're talking about net zero, we're talking about everything we're talking about here, and that just flies in the face of it completely.
It's almost an insult, frankly, Dave. And I was there for 10 years. We had 20,000 visitors through that centre. These are trade visitors, not open to the public, not school kids, not... These were hard trade people.
I remember visiting it a long time ago. An extraordinary place.
Yeah.
And I'm just shocked, I've got to be honest. But anyway, what do you and I know? I certainly know a lot less than you, but that's for sure. But then you're a lot older. And look, I just want to ask you generally, as a panel, how clued up is the public on water? Who wants to pick that one up?
Not at all is the sad thing. It's been the poor relation, really, in the whole environmental discussion.
Yeah, but I just turn the tap on and it comes out. What's
Exactly.
the problem with that?
Well, if it does, that's the problem. Just to give you a sort of wild example, there's less potable water per capita in the southeast of England than there is in the Sudan. We transport water.
Say that again.
Less potable water per capita in the southeast of England than there is in Sudan.
But we're surrounded by water.
But where is the question? We don't have a water network like we have an electricity network or a gas network even.
Okay.
You know, we transport it over a distance, but there isn't a national network. So some of the rivers in the summer are running dry. And in Europe at the moment, the River Po in Italy has just run dry. Half of the US of A, the most sophisticated economy in the Western world...
I'm not sure about that. I'd agree with sophisticated. But
half of the USA is in water crisis.
Wow.
What more do you need to know?
Yvonne, you were going to say something, I think, when I asked that question.
Yeah, Tim stealed the thunder there.
Always does.
Listen for the thunder.
Yeah.
There are a lot of misconceptions with regards to water. Water is too cheap. There are too many people living on the planet, and we've all got bad habits on using water. You say we're surrounded by water, but it's salt water, and you can't drink salt water. There's 3% of water on the globe that is drinkable water, but only 1% of that is accessible. So if you put all this into perspective, there is a mega problem with water.
Yeah. I kind of feel like I've got to stand up for the public at large to a certain extent in this, because it does feel counterintuitive in a country that is renowned for grey skies and quite frequent floods that we have a shortage of water.
Yes.
But the simple fact is that climate change is making water more difficult to manage. So we've got enough, it's just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that's why we need to start making some interventions to make water manage demand better.
Right, Alex.
I was just going to say as well, I think take the discussion on a little bit more from water as well. I think while consumers are sort of largely unaware of how much water they use, partly because, to Yvonne's point, it doesn't cost them a huge amount, I think they're also particularly unaware of the relationship between their use of hot water and energy. I think people don't make the relationship.
Again, you just turn the hot tap on and hot water comes out.
Exactly. And I think most people are unaware that 20 to 30% of the energy use that they use in their homes typically is through hot water.
Wow.
And that's actually...
See, I was unaware of that till you said that.
Well, every day's a school day.
Every day's a school, particularly
I think
for me.
once you start putting those things together, actually, it starts to become much more relevant to people, particularly cost of living crisis, etc. So I think, water and energy are kind of inextricably linked, and the two things are, more relevant than they ever have been.
Yvonne.
Well,
You're not Yvonne. You might be at weekends, but you're not at the moment. Yvonne,
Alex is right.
Maisie, actually.
If everybody in the UK knocked 1 minute off their shower every day, you would save 7% of that 25 to 30% of your energy bill.
Seriously.
So there are mega savings that can be, the consumers can understand. But coming back to your first point, David, is that it comes out the sky for free.
and we get a lot of it.
And that's the misconception. We don't get the rain. Going back to Tim's point, we don't get the rain, but as Tom said, going along the panel, it's grey skies. So we assume grey skies is going to rain.
Yes.
And it's not. But when the water comes out of the sky, that water has been around since the dinosaurs were on this planet.
Yeah.
It's the same water. It just goes round in the cycle of environmental issues. Goes through the cleansing process of the mountains and the rivers and the rocks and what have you.
Yeah.
But we have to think more seriously, and our politicians have got to think more seriously.
Yes.
And we need to understand how we can link everything together.
Tom.
Yeah, just on your original question around how clued up's the public, Yvonne and I participate in a lot of discussions with government around water efficiency policy and their demand. They want to reduce domestic water consumption, but quite frequently the question is asked of the officials, well, what's your water consumption on a daily basis? What flow rate is your shower? And very rarely does anyone have an answer. People just are unaware of the water-using properties of their building. And it's just a fact that we need to cope with as an industry at the moment.
Tim, I noticed you chuckling at the comment about dinosaurs. I don't bring you in on that particularly, especially, but you were gonna make a comment.
Again, talking about that knowledge of water. Of course, there are carbon implications for water as well.
Yes.
There's the treatment of water, there's the transportation of water, etc. So there's a carbon implication there. And to be brutally honest, Dave, you also die without water. Water is a necessity of life. So I don't think anyone can understand just how important water is to us. I think the issue is we don't understand how we use it and where we use it. Until recently, your water bill was linked to the rateable value of your house. It was actually nothing to do with the volume of water.
Yeah.
Now we're seeing some water meters being fitted. I have a water meter, so I can actually tell how much I'm using, whereas for a lot of people, it was an imaginary number.
But you're, with the greatest respect to everybody else, you're one of the educated. You understand all about this. And you. And so, a number of times we've sat in these great debates and said, well, it's education. And we've said it for the last 7 years since we've been doing Installer. So when, how? I suspect this autumn is going to be a kick up the backside for a lot of people because heating bills and fuel bills are going to rocket. And people are going to start realising actually that it costs money to do all of this stuff. And water will become part of that equation. Go on, Yvonne, you're going to say something.
Just picking up on that point there, David. How are we going to educate the consumer? We know because we're involved with it on a day-to-day basis, but consumers aren't. And even if energy bills do skyrocket, they still won't know.
But it's the opportunity to educate them because they will be listening because it's affecting their wallets.
But that education process has to be kick-started by somebody.
And that's the question. By whom?
Yes, and I believe that it is every one of us has to take a part in the role of educating, which is one of the reasons the Unified Water Label is at the show, to educate the installers, which is at the coalface with the consumers.
Yeah, because they're the ones in the properties.
Yes.
Yeah, I was exactly going to agree with that. I think, all the research that we do, we know how important the installer is in terms of particularly the bathroom choice, what products people use. The installer is in a unique position, really.
They're the best sales force for every single manufacturer in this hall.
Precisely, and I think, but the important thing is, I think, to the point Tom was making, is that we've got to talk to consumers in a language that they understand.
That's
and I think, what everyone understands is pounds and pence. And I think that's, to your point, and that's where it comes in. People can really understand the impact of their bills, particularly at the moment. We've seen such a marked rise in energy costs, and I think this is a really great opportunity for installers to be able to influence consumers and say, well, look, if you choose this product, it's going to pay back because it's going to take X amount off your energy bills. And I think, and maybe we'll come on to it, but there are products out there which can do that at the moment, but are installers comfortable selling them? Do they know how to install them? And, are they confident that they're not going to let them down?
Right, but so we're talking about people now, installers, and I absolutely 100% agree with you, are the potential, the best salespeople, educators, whatever you want to call them, but they're only being called in when they're being called in. So unless you call them in, you're not going to be educated, if that makes sense. So then we need something else, because actually you might tip people into going, do you know what, we've been thinking of having a shower, I can't be bothered. Oh wow, hang on a minute, if you're telling me by cutting down in my shower by 5 minutes or from 6 to 5 minutes every day, and all three of us in the house do that, we'll save X amount. There's something I can understand, X minus Y equals Z. That's understand. So it's more than just the installers.
Yeah, I think so. I think, there's layers to it. I think it would be great if people who are doing their bathrooms at the moment started to do that. So I think it is a step-by-step process. But I also think there are triggers that are going to incentivise this. So, for example, the changes to the building regulations which are coming in for new build are also going to be flowing through for social housing and for rented accommodation. So there will be an obligation on landlords and social housing providers to improve the energy performance of their buildings, and a lot of that could be done through improving people's use of hot water. So I think there are certain triggers. I don't disagree that I think it would be great if everyone woke up tomorrow and said, let's be more water and energy efficient, but let's also be realistic and pragmatic about the triggers that exist that enable us to take steps forward in the reasonably short to medium term.
Tom, then I'll come to Yvonne after that. Tom.
Yeah, in terms of whose responsibility it should be to drive the debate and kickstart the education. Well, no, the simple fact is we've all got a role to play. So manufacturers depend on a secure supply of water for their products to be functional, so that it's in their interest to drive the debate. Installers clearly have got a massive influence on the purchasing decision and the behaviours of their customers once the products are installed, so they need to be part of the conversation. And yes, Dave, the government's got a role to play as well, and their stakeholders in the water industry.
But there is a thing about the government, isn't it? Because if one government goes out, the next government comes in, and they change their mind, they decide something else is more important, they take the funding out, then that's all gone and flushed away, to use a pun maybe. But Yvonne, go on, you were going to say something.
I've been on this planet long enough to remember a lot of the campaigns that government has driven. Green Cross Code. Turn the lights off. You don't live in a barn. We had that when we were kids. And it's those sorts of campaigns that need to get that message across. Industry then can piggyback on them campaigns because they have the products, they have the label, and they understand their products. So we need the installer, the merchant, and the retailers to also be educated. But it is, somebody's got to kickstart it.
Yes.
And it's got to be a consumer campaign. And consumer campaigns are expensive, and we all know where we are today with, escalating spend from government, and it's going to be cut. But therefore, what cohesive messaging can we all as partners come together on?
Right, and I'm going to pick you up on that. And Tim, I'm going to come to you on that and pick Yvonne up on that. You and I sat here, we're in Coventry, down the road, 9 months ago. We sat on 3 different panels and absolutely applaud what you're saying, but who's going to do it? Are you going to do it? The 4 of you get together after this and start something, a movement going? Or where's it? Because it's words, and but you're right. But it's words until somebody picks up the ball and runs with it.
Okay, I've got really quite strong feelings about this, Dave. I think, if you show people absolutely distinct actions that they can do, and relatively easy actions, relatively inexpensive actions, and prove to them that they can make advances
Yes.
in terms of saving without necessarily affecting the behaviour, you know, their enjoyment, then I think that's how you make ground. Because if you can show them in a small way, then they're much more likely to take a bigger step.
Agreed.
And I think there's some fantastic products, you know, not the least of which shower heads, you
Yeah,
know,
well, let's
where
come
you
on.
can make a really very easy change
Yeah.
and make a really good saving. Now that to me is a way of influencing consumers.
Yep, I agree. You haven't really answered the question I asked, but that's okay. We'll come back to it. But so, Alex, let's talk about the technologies and what's out there at the moment. Tell us a little bit about what's available out there.
Yeah, so I think to Tim's point, there are absolutely currently products out there, whether it's water-saving shower heads. You know, a lot of the shower heads that we sell have water-saving settings on them already. And, you know, we've got digital showers that tell you in live time how much water you're using as well. And I think, you know, those sort of nudge technologies are very effective in getting consumers to, you know, everyone wants to do the right thing. We've all seen David Attenborough, you know, so I think everyone, if they're given the opportunity, will do that. I think the real secret that I think, you know, we're trying to uncover, and there are opportunities around, is actually being able to do it without diminishing the experience in any way. So alluded to the energy saving previously. We've launched a product called Heat Capture, which is a wastewater heat recovery device, which effectively uses the wastewater from a shower to heat the incoming water into a home. And therefore, that can reduce the amount of energy that it takes to actually bring your hot water up to temperature. Now, most consumers they would not even know that was fitted, but that is potentially giving them
So
a
who do you
significant
advertise to? The
saving.
installer?
So at the moment, we're primarily selling that product into new build,
Right.
because new build really is the part of the market that is being kind of forced to adopt these technologies through legislation, through changes to Part L building regulations. But as I said before, I think that is really going to fast follow into retrofit, and that's, you know, why we're here exhibiting today, telling people about this product, because, you know, why wouldn't you fit that in your house? It's, you know, it pays back in less than 5 years. It doesn't diminish your experience in any way. And I think, you know, that's, I think, from a manufacturer, from an innovation point of view, is, you know, can we deliver the same or equivalent or better experiences without actually, while reducing less water and less energy at the same time?
Tom,
Yeah, I mean, Alex is clearly the expert in the showering world, but another area where you can achieve quite healthy water savings, really without any impact on the customer experience, is within WCs. And for a long, long time, there's been delay fill inlet valves available on the marketplace, but for some reason, just not taken up in the same way as the traditional valves. And they can save over a litre each time you flush your toilet.
any idea what that reason might be?
If I'm honest, Dave, I'm flummoxed. Perhaps Tim's got some insight here.
Well, it's just complete disinterest, isn't it? These are hygiene issues, and by hygiene I don't mean cleanliness. I mean, these are necessities. We have to have them. You know, we know that. But how it works, I don't know. I'm not really interested, you know.
As long as it works, I don't care.
I've got to say, I think the water label is a fantastic way of helping people to understand the implications and the solutions, you know. You know yourself from the energy label, try and buy an appliance which isn't A-rated now.
Yeah.
You know, when the energy label first came in, there was a huge gamut of different people. Now, the minimum is an A. In fact, they had to reclassify the energy label because it became A star, A star star, A star star star. And that helps people to understand why you pick that product as opposed to that product. I don't have to understand the technicalities. If I can see on a little label, it's green at the top, that means it's better. A, I want an A, I don't want an E. There you are. Very, very simple. And I think it's a fantastic tool.
Well, I would certainly agree with with Tim. I'm not going to disagree with that one. I know Alex, Mira supports the water label extensively, has done from the beginning. So the products are out there. Innovation is driving the marketplace. We have the label. So collectively, we have the solution. Unfortunately, coming back to your previous point, Consumers don't replace bathroom products as frequently as they do their washing machine and fridges. So therefore, we have to incentivize the marketplace to flip out. Now, the new build market is covered by building regulations. There's already water efficiency built into the building regulations. It is the existing housing market and building market that needs to be tackled. And that is a huge, huge challenge that everybody runs the other way. Now, if we can tackle that collectively, then we may have the solution that will help government to reach its net zero carbon targets by 2050. At the moment, I've been listening to the seminars that have been taking place over the last 3 days. They're not on target. They're not going to get there.
We're not going to get there.
No.
You can talk as much as you like. From what I'm hearing from a simpleton's point of view, we're not going to get it. It's just vote-winning stuff at the end of the day. It's buzzwords and jargon and so on and so forth. Tom, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, absolutely endorse what Yvonne said about incentivisation, and this fits really with what you're saying, Dave. If we're really going to reach our net zero targets, there's got to be a coherent plan that includes incentivisation and pushing the market into not just water saving, but about wider decarbonisation of buildings. And there's a national retrofit strategy which has been developed and proposed by really a wide cross-section of the construction industry. But it's for some reason it's sitting on the shelf at the moment, and it needs to be taken off the shelf and made into reality.
Yeah, Tim, you touched on it. Fridges, cookers get replaced, regular washing machines. Toilets aren't sexy.
No.
How do you make a toilet sexy?
That's a good question, and actually, we've been very water wasteful. I mean, water consumption has gone absolutely through the roof. In the last 50 years, it's gone up by almost 50%.
Your grass looks very green, I've got to
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
Your
Well,
social media.
but, you know, on average, we're using 150 litres per person per day. You know, when I was young, and I used to speak to quite a lot of young people, students, and I used to try and explain to them that when I was young, we had a bath every week, whether we needed it or not. Sunday night was bath night. And what's more,
you shared the water.
deep breath,
Yeah.
we shared it.
Yes.
If you were third in, it was a bit
Bad
grey,
luck.
you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
So nowadays, we don't think twice about having a power washer and, you know, blowing it out. We have showering is a great case in point. If you ask the majority of people what a good shower is, they'll say it's a powerful shower. And therefore, we've become water wasteful. We've taken a valuable resource and we have devalued it.
But Alex, taking to that point, isn't that a bit of a dilemma for the manufacturers? Because people want power showers.
Yeah, absolutely, and I mean that is quite literally the most searched term relating to
Is it
showers.
really?
Yeah, is power showers. So that's what
Other
people are
than
looking
combine
for.
harvester in government, but don't go
Yeah.
down that. So.
But I think I think the secret that there are ways of making a shower feel much more powerful using less water, and there is technology behind that, and there are innovations that can be put into the marketplace. But I think both consumers and I think particularly installers, do tend to be creatures of habit, as Yvonne alluded to. You don't buy a bathroom, on an impulse. It's something you've usually been planning for
It's
a long.
a distress purchase, apparently. It's a big outlay.
There are distress purchases where a shower breaks, but a lot of the time, particularly if you're, unless you're fitting an electric shower, over 50% of the time people are doing a wider bathroom refit, and it's a significant investment. So I think getting people to, take the leap to say, actually, I'm not going to get the kind of product that I had before, and I'm going to get something that's a bit different and maybe is going to be energy saving. I think you need to incentivize that, and I think from an installer's perspective as well, I think you really need to incentivize them to take that risk, because when they fit a product, they would much rather fit something that they have fit before, that they know works and is reliable. So I think again, getting them to be able to take that leap is the challenge really, and I think a lot of that for me comes to incentivization. Can you make it cheaper for people to do that, or can you offer them some kind of grant in order to do that, which is more likely to get that uptake?
So, yes, and thank you. My wife and I, we moved into our house 18 months ago, and we've converted 2 of the bathrooms, or we've updated them, if you like. Not once when we were looking around did anyone talk to us about energy or anything like that. They said, what do you like the look of? You know, what is it? But even when we said, well, we like that, they didn't say, well, okay, but you can go for that. But if you went for this one, you'd say, we didn't have any of those conversations. So it's not just the consumers. I mean, it's kind of, and I don't know if it's all the outlets, maybe just the one we used, I don't know. But there is definitely an education gap, without a doubt. Yvonne, I want to ask you about the label. How much buy-in do you, presumably it's a no-brainer, everybody signs up for it.
We currently have 160 major brands. The water label is European.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with Brexit. It's just that we're
Well,
part
it'd
of
only be flowing one way if it was, wouldn't it?
we're part of Europe, whether we like it or not. The database of products is sitting currently at 13,500. The scheme itself is used extensively by architects and specifiers,
Right.
but it's not used by installers and retailers.
Or current homeowners, is it?
Well,
Because I didn't know about it.
We're starting to see home owners using the database. Now, I believe, back to the misconception, is that retailers and merchants and installers believe consumers are not interested. But research over the last 2 years has indicated that consumers are now switched on. But I'll go back to an initiative that's taken place in Italy, where they have incentivized from the minute incentivization, so you can get fairly 20, 30 euro for a tap or a shower, right the way up. But there's no incentive program in the UK. And incentivization is important to kick-start it like the boiler scrappage.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because also we've replaced a boiler recently, and the incentive just wasn't good enough. You know, because we were quoted, I think, £23,000, and we were going to get, what, 3 or 4 grand back? Well, we just couldn't afford it. So that incentive didn't work. We're talking about lower cost entry, I guess, when we come into bathrooms, but we just couldn't take advantage of that. So is that just an initiative that's, look, we've done an initiative, so everybody should be doing it? I don't know. I'm asking the question.
I think there's not one answer.
Right.
I think there are many answers, and we have to look at things collectively. I know you don't like government being mentioned in our debate today.
I didn't say I didn't like them. I didn't say I didn't like them. I just said I wasn't sure who was going to be in government.
Well, that's a good point. That's for another debate, another day.
Yeah.
I think government has always had a bad image of industry. They don't listen to the experts, but that is where the expertise is.
Well, because that's sorry to interrupt you, but that's kind of where I'm coming from when I talk about government, because they think they're the experts.
Yeah.
Why don't they call the experts in to advise them
Fully
and talk
agree.
to the people who really know what's going on?
Fully agree. And we're just starting to break down the barriers. Tom alluded to it earlier in our discussions about we're constantly engaged with the government, whether it was the European Commission historically or whether it's Westminster today.
Yeah.
We are now talking and they are now listening.
Right.
But we're not yet seeing
Talking,
the
listening,
action.
then there's doing.
Well, we haven't got there yet.
They only listen when there's a real problem, Dave, and
For them or for us?
Well, for everybody. You know, when water supplies start running dry,
Yeah.
then they're interested.
Yeah.
When the farmers, can't grow their crops because there's not enough water to water them, that's when it starts getting interesting. It has to be a currency. I'm not a firm believer of supporting it with incentives. I think it has to become bleedingly obvious.
I know,
frankly.
but why? I'll come to you in a second, Tom. But why do we have to wait for a child to be run over before a zebra crossing's put outside of school?
Well, then we can learn lessons, can't we? The world's favourite. We've made a mistake, but we've learned lessons since then.
I mean,
and the
we'll
fact
have a
of the
party.
matter is that it is happening now.
Yeah.
It's happening now. This isn't a tomorrow issue, it's a today issue.
I get it. Tom.
Yeah, I'm not going to defend the government, but last year the minister in charge of water policy issued a statement saying they're going to do X, Y, and Z to try and reduce domestic water consumption. And one of those things was consider the introduction of mandatory water efficiency labelling for products. And I'm really, really enthusiastic that the unified water label scheme that already exists will be the route to comply with that new requirement. And that's really important because that the label will increase in value if it's visible at point of sale. And it's visible at the places where installers are going to purchase their bathroom products. So then that awareness, which clearly you lacked, Dave, when you were purchasing your bathroom products, actually will get over that hurdle.
Yeah, because I'm a classic consumer. We had money to do something with, but we weren't given the right advice necessarily. Go on.
Yeah, I was just going to. I mean, I'm not convinced that consumers will make the right choices purely just for altruistic reasons. You know, the research that we've done suggests that while consumers are more aware and concerned about sustainability issues, you know, that hierarchy of needs, it's still a really powerful shower. So, you know, I'm really passionate about the role innovation has to play in this. I think, you know, we really have to have solutions that don't appear like a significant compromise or a hair shirt to the consumer, that they can retain that really good experience of using bathroom products. But I think the role of incentives goes, you know, I think beyond just purely to the consumer and the installer, but also, you know, manufacturers. Are we being incentivized by government to develop these solutions? You know, are we being offered, whether it's the, you know, the R&D tax credits or whatever it is, to a sufficient degree to get people to invest in that? And it's not a perfect analogy, but if you think about, you know, electric cars, you know, the adoption rate of those is going higher and higher now. And that's because the infrastructure's been invested in, that it's getting better, but also the product's really good. You know, you're not driving a useless car anymore. Actually, the cars are really nice, they're really easy to use, and from a cost perspective, you know, can be shown to pay back, and there are significant incentives for people to make that switch. So I think that there are certainly gaps in the analogy, but I think there may be lessons to be learned about how you can actually make change happen more quickly.
We had a long discussion about electric cars yesterday. Actually, go on, Tim.
It's quite interesting because one of the things that came out yesterday was the fact that actually electric cars didn't really make a huge jump until there was an innovator who came in, who happened to be Tesla, you know, but it could have been anybody, who actually did things in a different way. He broke the mold, you know, and actually electric cars, I had an electric car in 2008, you know, so they're not new, but the fact of the matter is, as the chap said, he made them sexy, you know, he made them like you really wanted one. It wasn't I must have that because it's good for the planet, or you got one because it was a sexy thing to have. And I think what we have to do is to show people, and I agree exactly with what you say, you know, you're not going to have a worse shower, you're going to have a different shower experience, and you're going to be saving a bit of money. Now, that to me is the way of influencing people. That's the way of doing it.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I travel a lot, I'm sure we all do, but with what I do for a living. And one of the things I can guarantee you when I check into a hotel that says, oh, we've got a powerful shower. And hotel, you know, I mean, how many showers in hotels are there around the world that have got power showers? Probably the majority, even the ones here, haven't. I mean, that's a massive... yes, go on.
Yeah, just to throw something in here, I mean, we've got to be careful as well that we don't create the wrong sorts of incentives, because there's some research going on right now at the moment where there's been some initial findings published where actually the correlation between the total water used in a showering event and the flow rate isn't a linear one. You know, it's quite possible there's a sweet spot at, you know, 7 to 9 litres per minute, which is where you're going to achieve the greatest water saving. If you go below that, people take a longer shower and use more water.
Yeah.
If you go above it, then clearly you're going to have the higher water use anyway. So we've got to be careful that we don't make the wrong policy decisions and then that end up countering against what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and that's definitely backed up by our research, that you go over a certain point and people don't necessarily notice the difference, but what people do definitely notice is when it's not good at all. And there's but you know, there's lots of clever ways that you can change sprays and all the rest of it. I'm also really excited. I know this debate's about water. We're talking so much about showering, which is great.
Go on, Yvonne.
I think we need to define what powerful means. Alex has already alluded to it. You can have a brilliant performance shower that uses less water, less energy today, and we need to get that marketing message out into the marketplace.
Yeah, see, I would have assumed it's got power coming through it, and therefore it must be a good shower. It almost takes your skin off. It's that powerful. But yes, it's all. So much of this is about messaging and communication and education.
totally agree. And I think we're at that's this stage in the journey where the manufacturers have the product and we have the solutions, and we need to be let run loose.
Right.
But, and there is a
There's
but
always a
there
but.
that I do need to bring up. It's important to remember that the quality of life we lead today in
Yep.
the Western world is because of the greatest invention, the WC. And it has been known and identified as the greatest invention because we enjoy the health. And we've got to be careful
Yes.
that we do not make a mockery of that invention.
So what's the tipping point for all of this? What's going to be the tipping point?
Well, finance is always, if it hurts your pocket, that's a real changer of people's
Do you mean
mind.
reassuringly expensive, or
I mean saving money, or perhaps not being open to bills of huge magnitude. I do think there is a general. I don't think anybody wants to do bad things, Dave, do they? Yeah,
No, of course
I think we all want to try and play our part. The easier that becomes, then the more likely we are to do it, I think. So it's almost like a crack record, this, I'm sorry, but it is education. It's about letting people know what they can do and how they can do it. And, there's plenty of ways of doing that. There's people sit in front of the TV every night. You go around here, you'll see people staring at their phones all day, So there's a way of getting that through. It's just making it a tasty meal rather than something that's forced on you.
something that's unpalatable?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tom?
Yeah, I see two potential tipping points. The first and more desirable from my point of view is that there's a clear and obvious and large market for products that are water-saving products, because that's what's been demanded of the consumer, and part of that comes back to education and making it sexy and so on. The second, and probably less desirable tipping point from my point of view, but it's still on the table, is around basically regulatory requirement and being compelled to do things within kind of certain remit. As I say, that will be very much my second choice, but it's where a tipping point can be achieved.
And with new builds, it's pretty easy, isn't it? I mean, because you just put in the mandatory system and mandate it, and it's got to happen. But it's where you've got existing and replacement retrofitting and so on. That's where the difficulty comes. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you just mentioned new build there, but also building from what Tom said. I mean, we've been involved with developers who've been looking to put in developments in parts of the country where they have been rejected planning permission because of the amount, the sort of water supply within that area could not cope with those additional homes. And, the developers are looking for, radical products to put in there so that they can keep building in that space. So it's kind of, it's not actually as far away as you think in terms of impacting the built environment. But the point around regulation, I think, works the other way as well, in terms of regulation that actually stifles innovation. There are certain products which we as manufacturers are looking at which could could really be quite game changing in terms of water and energy use within bathrooms and showering, that at the moment would not comply with current regulations around water products. So I think there's an element there as well around, are we going to have to relax, maybe regulation in other areas to kind of really try and drive and incentivize people looking for these products, but you're also going to have to relax in other areas to enable other solutions. Obviously within safety parameters, but there are certain regulations which are potentially stifling that we really do need to look at.
Yes, Yvonne.
Okay, just taking Alex's points a few steps forward. Regulation is all well and good, supported by good market surveillance. Without the market surveillance, any old rubbish can be sold, and you break the law when it's installed. That's not good enough today.
So what do you mean exactly by market surveillance?
Well, the current water regulations allow you to sell anything in the marketplace, but the moment you install it and use it, you're breaking the law. Well, that's just the wrong way of
nuts.
doing it. Yeah. So regulation is good to a certain extent. I do fully support what Alex has said about, come on now, regulation should not stop innovation. And we do not learn from past mistakes. Tim's already said it a couple of times. We need to learn from past mistakes. Stop having dual regulation that conflicts with each other and get some good market surveillance to stop the product coming in the first place.
Oh, that was quite... You were forceful.
I get so
you
angry
meant
about
that,
it.
didn't you?
I know. That's 37 years in the industry coming out now.
Brilliant. Tim, did you...
No, I just support it really. Building regulations in general are really poorly policed. Really poorly policed. You know, we used to have building inspectors from local authorities. I could go on and on and on. In new build in particular, I've got to say, they're horrendous. You know, they take a selection. If you build 2,000 houses, how many will they inspect?
Okay.
Yeah. It's embarrassing. And also, I might say, they might be using building regulations that are 10 years old because the building regulations apply as to when you make the initial application.
Do you know, I love doing this event. I love hosting this event because I do all sorts of different business sectors and so on. But I go home happy and sad. Happy that there's all this stuff going on, fantastic, and sad that it's not being used. Or it's not being used enough, or there's no regulation to put it in, or people aren't educated. I come back learning stuff, which I'll forget, by the way, because it's not reinforced, because I've got so many other messages hitting me. And it's a dilemma that we have within this industry, it seems to me. It's just extraordinary. Tom, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to jump on Yvonne and Tim's soapbox on market surveillance, because it is frankly woeful, isn't it? I mean... Over the years, trading standards departments within local authorities have been absolutely decimated to a point that they can't really do any proactive rather than reactive enforcement action anymore. And similarly, on water regulations, you know, as enforcers, the water authorities maybe look at a fraction of new build and notifiable developments. 70% of bathroom refurbishments are RMI, so they wouldn't even fall within the scope of potential enforcement action. So, you know, we're really scratching the surface in terms of market surveillance. And just one other thing to add on the potential regulatory barriers to innovation. There's some kind of business-to-business blue tape which is created by demanding specific approvals for water regulation at the moment, which creates a bottleneck in the system and prevents innovation. And that's completely business to business. There's no regulatory requirement why any of the three different approval schemes, so the famous one is RAS, but also there's KIWA Reg 4 and NSF. You know, if they were all acceptable within the marketplace through specifiers and all acknowledged by installers, that would go a long way to unleashing greater innovation in the sector.
I was just going to say about your point of being a bit depressed by the conversation sometimes. But I think one thing I would say is that I think certainly as our perspective as a manufacturer, I think, you know, what we are seeing, particularly on the specification side, and I take Tom's point about RMI, is there is way more engagement around these topics than we have seen over recent years. You know, the developers.
Well, that's great. That gives me hope, actually.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, and to that end, you know, obviously as a manufacturer, we're investing in developing products in these spaces because, you know, we truly believe there is a market for them. So I think in that sense, you know, there are significant challenges ahead, but I think, you know, there is, you know, as Tim was saying, I think everyone wants to make the right choice. They just don't necessarily know that they have the choice, or they're not being incentivized enough just to take that step over the line. But from our point of view, I think, you know, a lot of the right sort of conversations are happening, and we are moving in the right direction, certainly.
Good, thank you. I'm going to pick up on a word, or a couple of words you used there, significant challenges ahead. I'm going to start, if I may, with you, Tom. The final question, what do you see as the biggest challenge moving forward over the next short to mid-term?
Why did you have to come to me first?
Because I thought you'd want to answer first.
The biggest challenge is about making water part of the debate. You know, energy we've done a fantastic job of raising the profile of the need to make buildings more energy efficient and reduce their carbon impact as a component of the built environment. We need to get water into that debate, and we've started on that journey, but there's a long way to go.
Okay, thank you, Yvonne.
Just building on what Tom said, fully agree with what he said as well. The biggest challenge I see is behaviour change. Without behaviour change, we have the product, but without behaviour change, we ain't saving a drop of water.
Consumer behaviour or everybody?
Everybody's behaviour, because every one of us is a consumer.
Fair point, fair point. Tim?
Yeah, I'm going to say is consumer awareness. I'm going to say getting the message out in easily understood, plain English, non-technical, and a route map to show you how you can do it and what you can do in your house with your circumstances.
And how you will benefit from it.
Exactly.
Or we, as
Exactly.
a race. will
Exactly.
benefit. Yeah. Okay. Alex, last word with you.
Yeah, I think similarly to what Tim said, I think, it comes back to, I think, getting consumers and installers really to buy into the fact that these solutions are not worse. Eco isn't a sort of a label that means a worse experience. And actually that we stop using these labels, that it just becomes ubiquitous. So I think for me it is about that consumer and installer engagement in really wanting to have these solutions that reduce water and energy use.
Thank you, one and all. We never claim we're going to come up with solutions, but what we will do is talk about these things. And it's fascinating, the debates we've had. And I'd like to thank Alex, Tim, Yvonne and Tom very much for joining us on this panel here.